Welcome to episode 2 of Botox Cowboys. I'm Tyler, and I have Andrew Dargie here with me.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
Not so bad. Where are you at? I haven't seen you for weeks.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we recorded the last one. I just got back this week from Hong Kong via Bali and just diving back into a little bit of work. Whereabouts in the world are you?
That sounds awesome. How was Bali?
Okay, I did not expect it, but the beaches are filthy. We stayed at a nice spot deep in the jungle, but two things that kind of surprised me about there were how long it takes to transport anywhere. You know, what would take 5 minutes in North America might take you an hour in Bali. So a little bit inefficient. And yeah, I was just a little surprised at the beaches. Maybe it's just the ones I went to, but man, not clean at all.
You
so
see
overall, good
pictures
trip.
all the
Got to see
time. The
family.
pictures look so great. Oh, the beaches look surreal.
I know, just like a Botox before and after. Sometimes what you see is not how it is.
Crazy, man. Crazy. I'm down in Panama, and the beaches are similar. Although if you drive up the coast, they're quite nice. Like an hour and a half from here. Really good beaches. I went last weekend. Anyways, well, welcome back to Canada.
Thanks, man. Yeah, ready to kick off this episode and dive into some Botox Cowboys.
Today we're talking filler, man. You gonna give us the rundown, or are you gonna try to convince me to do a lip flip?
Well, listen, I thought you were going to book in for that lip flip already.
Not lip flip.
One of the things that I get asked a lot, you know, we'll segue into fillers here is a lip flip filler. No, totally different. Lip filler, these are some gels that volumize the lip and give it some volume. So I suppose to just dive into it, what the heck is filler? Filler is just a term in aesthetics that refers to a volumizing agent. Most commonly, these are hyaluronic acid gels. You can use them anywhere in the face. We know that as we age, we lose some volume. Our fat pads atrophy, bone recedes. We need to replace this to keep looking young and refreshed. And so that's what filler is.
So Andrew, what are the risks of fillers?
I would say that the number one risk of filler is not getting a desirable cosmetic effect. And that's a little bit on the patient, a bit on the injector. In terms of the worst case medical problem that you can have with filler, it's if filler blocks a blood vessel. So if filler is injected into an artery, it can block the blood flow. And obviously we know that organs, tissue, they all need oxygenation to live. And so if you block a vessel of significance, you know, in the face, and you get necrosis or skin breakdown, this can elicit a very poor cosmetic result that can be permanently damaging to a client. Now, this doesn't happen all that often, and there are ways of reversing this. You know, we have agents, there are agents. Doesn't mean everyone carries them in their clinic, but there are reversal agents. I've been asked at least half a dozen times within the last year from clinics in my city, when they have a blockage, they don't actually carry this stuff on site. So they're calling me to bail them out of a hot spot, and we do it.
Unbelievable. That's something to think about when you guys are picking an injector then.
Man, it's so wild. Like, there's no way in hospital medicine, if you're doing a procedure, you have to be able to fix a complication should it occur. This is no different, and yet this is very poorly regulated, and I don't know what gives the industry a bad rap sometimes.
Okay, let's jump into the Clinic Corral. Questions from the clinic. Question 1, is filler only for girls?
Definitely not. Boys, girls, we're all aging, and fillers are amazing tools for facial rejuvenation. I think it's a very common stigma that, oh man, you know, I would never get filler because I'm a guy, but no, it's just as good for guys as it is for girls.
What's kind of the percentage of guys to girls that you treat with filler versus Botox versus any other treatments?
I would say it would be 70% female, 30% male for Botox treatments. Filler would be about 90% female, 10% guy. Although I do see that ratio growing just a little bit slower than I would hope.
Do guys typically get any of the other ones? And next week we're going to talk about biostimulants, I think, but there's a million treatments out there. For the most part, what you see is you see some Botox, a little bit of filler, and kind of zilch on everything else.
I think just in general, guys are a little bit behind in the times. It hasn't been a priority for guys to necessarily invest in cosmetic treatments, but I'd say that in general, men are getting more exposure to all the different things, and filler is one of them.
What's the weirdest filler request you've ever had, and was it from a guy?
Yeah, man, it's from you when you asked me for filler.
Is this going on the air? Amazing. Welcome to the Botox Cowboys.
I'll answer that question seriously. I think the second weirdest request that I've got is filler can literally be used anywhere. So it's not necessarily weird. It maybe just be places that I wouldn't typically expect it. You know, I've had patients ask for breast augmentation with filler, and that to me doesn't make much sense given, you know, we have great surgical options that are far more effective, frankly, more cost effective. To solidify what I was saying, I don't think there's any weird requests. There's just sort of unusual requests. And those typically come in areas that perhaps are less exposed to the general public. So you just have to be prepared for everything.
I wish you could unpack that for us because that sounds juicy. But maybe I'll convince him on another episode. If you could inject one historical figure with filler, who would it be and why?
I'm going to preface this just to be really, really cautious. Everyone in this world could benefit from some form of rejuvenation. So I'm not insinuating that somebody needs filler. I have filler myself. So we joke about this, but there are some people that get a little bit touchy about this. Actually, funny story for you, Tyler. So we were at a training program on the East Coast, and there was a group of us and our educators were all out. You know, typically when people see us in our Botox course scrubs, they all have questions. They're all like, oh, can I come in for a treatment? And, you know, we had a server who was really vibing with us, and it was a great evening. And at the end, it turns out that we actually had a patient model treatment spot the next day, and I thought she was great. So I was like, hey, look, no disrespect here or anything, but if you want, I'd be happy to give you a free filler treatment. She got so mad at me.
How do you bring that up to someone? Yeah. Wow.
Well, we were joking about it the whole evening, and you know, I guess there are going to be some sensitive people out there, and I think anyone that knows me would know that I'm incredibly gentle about these things, very much respectful of people, and don't make any assumptions that people would want or need these procedures. But I think in general, if I had to pick a celebrity to inject, I'm going to second preface this because I know she's got a huge following, and this would be the reason I would offer her treatment. It's probably Taylor Swift. I actually couldn't tell you what she needs.
Oh.
Well, no, because it would be probably good for my career.
Oh, you just want someone famous, the most famous. Okay, free Botox and filler for Taylor Swift if she's listening.
Totally. She can just tell me where to put it. I am not going to direct traffic there. You know, maybe she'd even bring in Travis Kelce. I feel like maybe I could convince him to do a treatment. He's a TV guy. Maybe a little temple filler. Everyone looks good with temple filler. Anyways, we'll leave it at that.
Unbelievable. Okay, well, hopefully they're listening. And if anybody else is listening that knows them, hopefully they can tell them to get them to listen.
I got you, Travis.
What is the biggest myth about filler that we have to debunk?
It makes you look fake.
You're saying it doesn't?
It doesn't. It shouldn't. Everything in this world in moderation. So if you drink too much water, it'll kill you with hyponatremia. All right? If you get too much filler, it can make you look ridiculous. And everyone in the world has seen somebody with filler that looks absolutely ridiculous. Ultimately, that is an injector's problem somewhere because they need to be the gatekeeper. And sometimes people have unreasonable requests, and it's an injector's job to know when to say no. But for 97, 98, 99% of people that get filler, you wouldn't know they get it. It looks completely natural. And whereas I think that there's so many people out there that think they can spot everyone that's had filler. Everyone can spot someone that looks ridiculous. But the vast majority of people out there get it, and they just don't know.
If you were to say, have you ever seen a guy that kind of looked overdone? Or typically is this more on the girl side of things?
Yeah, I would say proportionately, it's probably the same. You certainly see more women that look overdone, and I think that's probably consistent with just more women doing the procedure. So certainly I have absolutely seen some men that look overdone, and some people have, I would say, maybe unrealistic expectations, but I suppose it's everyone's prerogative. If people want to look what we might consider abnormal, they'll have to find somebody that offers that type of procedure and work.
Good answer. And I asked it to segue into this one. If there are some guys out there that do look overdone, I'm sure most of them look completely underdone. How would you convince a cowboy to get some filler?
I love this. It's like, hey, I have a friend that's interested in asking a question. Okay, Tyler, I know you want filler. Let me convince you to do this. I would say that in general, guys are particularly scared of looking strange, okay? Because they pick up when a woman looks off. I think that I would try and normalize it and just explain the mechanism by which this works. I'd point out where I have filler, why I get it, and how they would never know. And specifically with guys, I would say a more common request is guys have recessed chins, typically a weaker jawline. You can absolutely use filler to build that back out and give you really crisp features that would look very normal and desirable for females. So I think I would just try and normalize the conversation, reassure them how this works. And yeah, it's worked so far in my career.
So yeah, it sounds like, education is important in this side of things. Where do you think the stigma comes from is kind of the next conversation to have. The stigma comes from for guys getting these treatments. Why has it been, I guess, something, I don't know, I don't want to say looked down upon, but something that a lot of guys just say they're not going to get under any circumstances. Why is that a social thing? I don't understand where the
Yeah, that's a
psyche is.
That's a good question. I mean, think about some phrases that we've grown up. You don't want to look like a girl. You don't want to look feminine. There's all sorts of misinformation out there, and guys are sensitive to that. Obviously, we're seeing some significant cultural shifts.
From education, from understanding what this is now and how it works.
Totally. All of this comes down to education. And as we know, we're in an area where there is a great deal of misinformation. So it's certainly an uphill battle, but it is the job of any qualified injector out there to teach, learn, educate. And I think it would do everyone well because it breaks down the stereotypes. It creates a better market for injectors and gives men the same opportunity to pursue facial rejuvenation strategies and look and feel their best.
That was a fucking awesome answer. Do you talk to, like, when you have a guy in the clinic, do you talk about what you get? And actually, what do you get?
Yeah, that's certainly something that I share openly. I'm not ashamed that I get filler. I'm 6'3", and I would say that I am an athletic build. And so one of the curses of people who are physically fit is often they have fat pad atrophy in the face. And so I look quite hollow in my temples. And so I've had 8 syringes of filler in my temples to help provide a little bit of rejuvenation there. I have had filler in my mid cheeks as there's large fat pads there that sometimes shrink a little bit, plus being malnourished through medical school residency and grinding for a really long time. Filler has been exceptionally good for me. Pointing this out to people, I'd say that just about everyone says, wow, I would assume you don't have any. That's where I've had filler.
Really good. Okay, we're kind of getting a little bit off track on this topic, but I think it's important. We do need to eliminate the stigma of guys getting this stuff, but let's get back to filler. Talk about the brands of filler and the types, I guess, just to give the audience a bit of education on that side of things.
This is a very dangerous question that could come under a great deal of scrutiny. So I'm going to answer this in a simplistic fashion. Is there are different brands of filler, and within each brand of filler, they have different types. And in general, all the companies out there make fillers of different viscosity. So there's some that are very watery, and there's some that are much firmer gels, ones that would effectively mimic bone, providing a great deal of lift and projection. I will save it for another episode, which is the best line of filler. as this is a polarizing topic, but I think an important one that patients should be aware of because there are substantial differences and a lot of people don't know what's being put in their face. So the best brand, I'll defer that question. In terms of filler, there are a bajillion different types, and it all comes down to their individual gel qualities.
Everyone's gonna be freaking out waiting to hear the answer for the best filler question. You'll have to like, do you own any of these companies? You own shares? Are you
No,
talking your book?
I actually don't. I don't own shares in any of these companies, but I know that there are some multi-billion-dollar companies out there that would be curious to know what the best brand of filler is and why.
Yeah, no doubt. What makes the best injector then? And who are the best injectors?
Those are two very interesting questions. So if you were to say who's the best basketball player, right? You could rattle off 10 people, or the best football player, the best hedge fund manager. Like, these are very quantifiable things in many ways. And certainly there's going to be some differing opinions. Are you a LeBron James, Michael Jordan guy? But at the end of the day, they're both incredible athletes. No one's going to object to that. In aesthetics, this is just something that does not exist. There is no hierarchy or ranking of injectors.
There are no points to tally, I guess. Essentially, you're looking at, does someone look good? It's a matter of opinion.
Very much so. And also, there's a lot of different variables that go into defining success, right? Are they an injector that does incredibly well with patients that are on a budget? Or, does this injector have better results because their patients can afford more treatments? Like, in general, the top aesthetic physicians in the world, they have all been traveling around the world and for the most part seen each other inject. And there is a great discrepancy even amongst the upper echelon of injectors. So for me to call out some names, no one would know who they are anyways. A good injector is going to be somebody that can properly set expectations, that has an exceptional understanding of the products and facial anatomy, someone who's a very effective communicator who can understand what their patients actually want and ensure that they can deliver optimal results within a budget that the patient comes in with. I think those people are few and far between. You can have some people that are strong injectors, terrible communicators, or you have people with a great Instagram that gets a bajillion clients in, but they're actually a terrible injector. I've seen a few injectors around the world and injected with them who I think are exceptionally strong. And I've also seen some ones that it's shocking to me that they would be on a podium anywhere. So that's a diplomatic answer. It's a really, really difficult thing to define within the field of aesthetics.
Give us some pro tips. What patients should know prior to getting filler, what injectors should know prior to offering filler.
Yeah, I suppose we have hopefully two different audiences listening to this. One is patients and one is injectors. I would say for patients, just be aware that typically filler comes in 1 milliliter syringes. So you're talking 1 milliliter of gel. In general, most people just need their expectations set for what one syringe can deliver. I also think that patients really do need to be aware that there are great inconsistencies in qualifications and abilities within the injector community. There are some exceptionally good ones and there are some exceptionally bad and what I would call dangerous ones. Really do your homework. Don't rely on Instagram, before and after photos. Everyone is kind of aware of what photo editing can do, what followings are. Some are fake, some are not, I would say earned. Go in and ask your injector lots of questions. In terms of speaking to injectors, the most important thing that an injector can do is appropriately set expectations. They have to be able to suss out what a patient actually wants and make sure it aligns with what they can deliver. Therefore, you're going to have a good treatment result. If there's any misalignment, I would just recommend not treating. You're always going to have a problem if a patient doesn't understand what the result is going to be. And as a general rule, it's better to underpromise and overdeliver. And this is something I really pride myself on doing. I would much rather educate a patient and have them go think about it rather than sell them on, hey, I'm going to give you a whole new face. charge you $5,000 for a treatment and then have them woefully disappointed thinking they were getting a facelift, and they'll never come back. So set expectations appropriately. Those would be two pearls of wisdom I would give to both sides of this equation.
Okay, well, give us a recap here and we'll close out episode 2.
Okay, well, I want to know, time. When are we booking you in for filler?
Where do I need filler? Now I need filler? This is why that lady said, fuck you, Andrew.
Well, to use your description of your lips, little tiny bird lips, I think you'd look great with a little bit of lip filler, and I think you'd look really good with forehead filler.
Forehead filler. Where in my forehead?
So guys often are unaware that there's a little bit of a step deformity. So, when we think about, everyone take a look at, younger kids or teenagers, they've got convex foreheads, so it's typically rounded nicely. And then as we age, and I have this myself, is that your frontal bone starts to recede a little bit. So
you get the Neanderthal brow.
Bingo, exactly. So you got a little creep of that, and I think, hey, a couple syringes, and suddenly Tyler's looking like $1 million.
Yeah, okay, I'll let you do that one.
Sweet. This is good. A little bit of education, a little bit of conversation, and look, you got a cowboy who's gonna go get a little bit of filler.
Yeah, exactly. We're here to try it all. Thanks for listening, everybody. Click subscribe, follow Andrew's Instagram at the Aesthetics Coach, and check us out at BotoxCowboys.com.